Is it possible to erase your credit profile? And do these credit reference agencies need your permission to process your information? What if you've been refused credit? Do you have a right to credit? And do they need your permission to do a credit search? These are the sorts of questions that I'm going to answer in this video, but also I'm going to provide you with some kind of assistance as well if you want to erase your online identity, because I have a partner for this video called Incognito, but more about them a little bit later. So first of all, let's get down to absolute basics. There is no absolute right to credit in England and Wales, and probably anywhere else for that matter. Credit is not something that you have a right to. It is something that companies will choose whether or not you have access to, i.e., they will choose whether or not to lend you money. And this is all based around the concept of risk. How much of a risk are you to the lender? What relationship do you have with money and debt? And can you be trusted with lending you the money when you're applying for credit? So all of this is decided by credit reference agencies. So what is a credit reference agency? Many people talk about them. Many people know what they are by name, but not necessarily what exactly it is that they do. Well, a credit reference agency, as the name suggests, is an agency that credit companies will reference when they are making decisions to lend people money or not. They give lenders a range of different bits of information all about you, a potential and prospective borrower, with which the lender is then going to make a decision whether or not they're going to offer you any kind of credit facility at all. Now, it might surprise you to learn that it's not necessarily a direct correlation between the better you are with repaying things, the better rate you will get. In some jurisdictions, at the very least, some people are punished by having a good historic relationship with money, and they get a higher rate of credit. Sounds counterintuitive, but when you think about the position from the lender, they are in the business to make money. And generally, it's going to be attractive to them to give a high rate of interest to someone they know that can repay it, whereas they might just flat out refuse those that they deem that they can't. But back to England and Wales, the main credit reference agencies in the UK are Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. Most of the information held by these are provided by your own utility and billing service accounts. This will also include lots of information about your previous addresses, people that you're linked to, public sources of information, much like you could search out about somebody else, such as being on other public records, such as public county court judgment records or bankruptcy records, or even the electoral rolls and all sorts of other bits of information. They collate all this information together, and together with other agencies such as fraud prevention agencies, they build up a profile known as your credit reference profile. And then in turn, they provide this to lenders and other establishments that are looking to do searches on you, soft or hard, and we'll come back to those a little bit later. So if you are refused credit, this is where the law comes in with how they process your data. The first question I can answer for you is that you cannot just insist that they remove and delete all of your information. Why? Because there is a legitimate reason for them to hold that information. So a lot of people get confused with the idea and this right to be forgotten, that you can insist that companies delete and remove all of your information from the internet just because you ask them to. Now, in certain situations, you can ask them to delete your information, but generally speaking, credit reference agencies are going to have a legitimate basis for holding your information, and therefore they're not likely to be forced to remove your information entirely. However, that's not the end of the matter. It rarely is. If you've been refused credit and you think it's unfair, you can go back to the lender to ask them to explain the reason for their decision, and even ask them to review the decision. And even then, they may still turn you down. But in doing so, you can request a copy of the information about your financial standing and what it is from the reference file from these agencies, from any of the main agencies, whichever one they use. And there's a list somewhere online as to which banks typically use which agencies, but that's by the by. You can ask them for a copy of the decision-making process as to why they've turned you down for credit. You can also get access to the information that is stored within your credit reference file. Now, here's another free golden tip for you. Don't be fooled into thinking that you've got to go and pay subscriptions to various different companies to get access to your credit report. One of them, this is not an affiliate of mine, but it's free information for you here. You can go to totallymoney.com. I will link it in the description. You can get access to your credit report completely free. You can see all of the information for any accounts, historic accounts, payments, financial connections, any adverse marks on your credit file, any people that are associated to you financially. And if you, as I have not just too long ago, discovered some random name at some random address linked to me somehow, which absolutely should not be linked to me in any way whatsoever, because I've never had anything to do with this random person, didn't even know who they were. So I raised a dispute through Totally Money. Again, not a sponsored video. This is genuinely what I do to maintain and keep a track on my own profiling. So I filed a dispute to say I have nothing to do with this person. It's totally random. File a dispute as to wherever this information came from. Sure enough, and before long, that information was removed from my credit file, which is important because if that person, whoever they were, had a terrible history, I don't want to be financially linked to said person if they've got a terrible history. So this comes into one of the rights that you have under data protection law, which is the right to have information removed and corrected and updated and so on if it is wrong. And in some cases, it is wrong, and you will want to get that changed. By going to Totally Money, you will be able to get access to all of that information. Now, as I said, there are different credit reference agencies, and the data protection laws apply to all of them, but only certain banks will use certain reference agencies and not necessarily all of them. So in one sense, you might need to go to each of the credit reference agencies, but I believe that Totally Money tries to collate it from each of the main agencies. They partner, Totally Money, this is partner with TransUnion and Experian in providing the information. So between the two, they've obviously deemed it that they get as much information as they probably can. So you will find the majority of your information through Totally Money by signing up there. Again, I stress this is not sponsored by Totally Money. I'll come back to my partner, Incognito, in a few moments, which does provide an excellent service, but that's my partner for the video. Totally Money is not. But either way, you don't have to sign up necessarily to any monthly subscription service to see information. There are some very good subscription services, so I'm not knocking those, but you can go to those and pay for those. They provide you additional services on top of that, such as alerts and all that sort of stuff. But just to get access to your credit report, it is no longer chargeable, at least through Totally Money. You can go there and get that for free. Now, what else happens if your file is inaccurate? If you find that there is information that is wrong on your report, such as it records that you've missed a payment when in fact you haven't, again, you can get that updated because it has to be kept up to date. And so you can make this request to companies like that. And so in the spirit of getting data removed and things like that, I will at this point thank my partner for this video, which is Incognito, because I have taken to finding someone to remove all of my information from marketing and other kind of databases that I just didn't want it on in the first place. And before long, I mean, I could not find a definitive list of these companies, these marketing companies that sell and harvest your data and spread it around on the internet. And then, invariably it's going to end up in the wrong hands. Then you're at risk of identity theft and all sorts of other kind of data protection breaches. There have been a number of different data breaches over the last year or two. I'm currently suing at least 3 different firms for data breach, because they've leaked my data, and I'm in the process of suing them for compensation. Again, I can come back to discuss that in another video, probably when those cases are done, and I'll tell you exactly what I did and how I did it. But in the meantime, to prevent your information getting out there in the first place, there is this service called Incognito, which contacts automatically just by going through a very short step process. You can put your information in so that Incognito knows who you are, and then on your behalf automatically send a data protection law compliant request to all of these companies and insist that they remove your information from their databases. It is very quick, it is very painless, and you get access to a dashboard which will update you and will show you near enough real-time, day by day, the progress of removing your information from the internet and from these third-party marketing companies. Now, this very concept of people selling you and your data might be somewhat new or alien to you, but it happens very much more often than you think it does. So it's not just a case of companies collecting your information so they can market to you. There is a whole sector of people gathering bits of information together about you so they can build up as full and complete a picture as they can about you and then sell that information on to other companies. So this is called data aggregation and collection. But the risk of that, of course, is that your information then ends up out in the wild and ends up on one of these data breaches. You may have heard in the news various such data breaches, such as Lime Leads ended up with 49 million records going up for sale online. Dealer Leads had an incident where over 200 million records on a wrongly configured database ended up for sale online. And the list goes on. 1.2 billion records found exposed on a single server. This goes on and on. There are dozens of these data breaches, and your information can end up out there in the wild. And then people can end up either stalking you, impersonating you. And this is where it links back to the credit reference agencies, because if you find information on your credit record which is just not you, such as a loan taken out or some other information that is just wrong, then you need to insist that this information is removed. But even before you do that, you can use Incognito to insist that these companies remove your data so that it limits the risk of this information being out there in the first place. Not only will it stop marketing, but it will also at least reduce the risk of your data ending up being used for identity theft or stalking and all kinds of other things that you simply want to prevent. So take advantage of my unique link, which is on screen right now and in the description below, for a unique discount, because I am very pleased to partner with Incognito for this video to help you genuinely to limit your risk, to remove your information from the internet, and ultimately prevent you from ending up in these terrible situations that my clients have been in, where they've had loans taken out in their names that they just didn't approve. Now back to data protection and potential or alleged breaches of GDPR. Now, on another note, some people believe that the DVLA providing your information to third parties is a breach of GDPR. But again, there's a legitimate reason for them to have it, that being your information is registered with the DVLA because you drive a motor vehicle. If you're the registered keeper of a vehicle, your information is stored with the DVLA because that is a legal requirement. If there is a collision and you need to find the details of somebody else because they've driven off, then there's two possibilities. You can either report it to the police. In fact, you should do, because you're supposed to report a non-stop collision to the police within 24 hours. But you can either do that or you can do it yourself. Either way, if you report it to the police will contact the DVLA, or you can go directly to the DVLA yourself. You can file what's called a V888 form. It's a slightly different form for companies, but either way, they're broadly the same form. That is where you request details for the registered keeper of a vehicle that you've got legitimate cause for. That might be a collision. It might be that the registered keeper you believe has committed a criminal offense, such as criminal damage, because let's say the driver has deliberately damaged your vehicle or even recklessly damaged your vehicle, got back in the vehicle and driven away. Therefore, you want the registered keeper's details of that vehicle so you can track down who was driving at the requisite time. That is a legitimate cause, and the DVLA is going to provide that information, provided that they are satisfied on balance of the information given to them that there is a real reason for them to provide that information. But as I say, they are not going to be in breach of GDPR by doing so. But at the same time, if your information is incorrect, as I've had a couple of people come to me in the last few weeks to say that their information is wrongly stored on the DVLA database, But again, data protection laws apply, and you can apply to have your information removed if it's no longer should be kept, or if it's incorrect, you can have it corrected, updated, and whatever. So all of those things apply to any time your information has been stored by any third party. So coming back to data protection, and again, your consent, whether your consent is required. Working backwards, your consent is not required for the DVLA to store your information. As I said, there is a legitimate basis for it to do so. And when it comes back, working right back to the credit reference agencies, they do not need your consent either to perform a search on your credit history, so long as there's a lawful basis for doing it. And this lawful basis is for them to justify, so they will need to justify it. But so long as they have a lawful basis, they don't need your consent and your permission to do that. On the other hand, if it's quite straightforward, if you've, let's say, applied for a loan or you've applied for a credit card, then that will feed its way back to the credit reference agency, and they will run the search on behalf of the lender. And again, they don't need your consent for doing so, but that will simply be the lawful basis for doing so. But again, if you didn't apply for the loan or the credit card or the mortgage or whatever it might be, but you see that pop up on your credit file, that is again a warning to you that your information is out in the wild, and you need to firstly apply to correct your credit record to say this was not you, you did not apply for this, and that search needs to be removed from your credit record, because if you've got a number of searches on there, it can damage your record because you are seen to be credit shopping. But moreover than that, if you find these applications on your credit report that you didn't carry out, then that is another sign that you need to check out my partner, Incognito, to help to remove your information from all of these agencies that store and sell your information worldwide. My unique link is on screen and is in the description below for a exclusive discount. So please avail yourself of that opportunity to remove all of your information from the internet. I have genuinely been doing that myself to remove my information from these agencies that otherwise would have been selling my data and would otherwise end up in the wrong hands. And so with that, I thank you for watching. I thank you for allowing me the time to introduce my sponsor for this video. Please make sure you like this video and subscribe. If you have further questions about this, you can join as a channel member, also linked in the description below. And in the meantime, thank you for watching.